1.3 adding integers. All right, so let's start with the definition. The cumulative property states that when adding or multiplying numbers, we can, quote, move around the numbers in the equation, or a plus b is equal to b plus a times b is equal to b times a, and a plus b plus c is equal to c plus b plus a is equal to b plus a plus c, which is equal to a plus c plus b. So if you look at this with some numbers, we can see that 6 plus 7 is equal to 7 plus 6, and both of these are equal to 13. Now similarly, 4 times 7 is equal to 7 times 4, which is equal to 28. Now it's easy to see that the cumulative property holds here because both of these expressions will equal the same number. However, if we wanted to look at subtraction, if we want to look at 6 minus 7, this does not equal to 7 minus 6, because 6 minus 7 is equal to -1, and 7 minus 6 is equal to +1. So we know that the cumulative property only works with addition and multiplication. Now, how do we add integers? When adding integers, we are going to have 4 possible outcomes. So when you're adding a positive integer and a positive integer, you will always get a positive integer. So we can see if we add a positive 7 plus a positive 7, we will get a positive 14. Now with a negative integer and a positive integer, we won't know what number we will get. The number we will get will be whichever number has the higher absolute value. So if we have a negative 14 and a positive 7, our answer is going to be -7, because negative 14 plus positive 7 would be -7. The reason we would be negative is because 14 is larger than 7. So the absolute value of -14 is larger than the absolute value of 7. Now we have a positive integer and a negative integer, the same thing is true. So if we start with a positive 14 and a -7, then we would get a positive 7. And this is because the absolute value of 14 is larger than the absolute value of -7. Now if we have two negative numbers, we will always get a negative sum. So let's start with -7 plus -7. So -7 plus -7 would give us -14. The reason this is because we were adding two negative numbers, so the sum will be negative. Now let's look at some examples. We want to find -2 plus 3. So this would take us to one of those scenarios where we have a positive and a negative number in our equation, which means the sum will be the sign of the integer with the larger absolute value. So the absolute value of 3 is equal to 3. The absolute value of -2 is equal to 2. So 3 has the larger absolute value. So when we look at -2 plus 3, our sum would be 1, because our sum is positive because 3 has a larger absolute value than -2, and we know that 3 plus -2 would be equal to 1. Now let's look at 18 plus -6. So again, the absolute value of 18 is equal to 18. The absolute value of -6 is equal to 6. So you can see that 18 has a larger absolute value, so this will be a positive number. So now we just want to look at 18 plus -6. Well, 18 plus -6 would be equal to 12, because you're taking 6 away from 18. Now let's look at 2003 and -2002. So we can see here that these two have similar absolute values, but they are not the same. All right, so we can also see that these are 1 digit apart. So 2003 plus -2002 would be equal to 1. It would be equal to +1 because the absolute value of 2003 is larger than the absolute value of -2002. Let's look at a word problem here. While playing golf, Kiara scored +3 on the first hole and -4 on the second hole. So what was Kiara's combined score? Since this is a word problem, let's go ahead and highlight what we know. So we see here a +3 and a -4. We also see a combined score. And again, combined is a little hint for us that we are going to be using a sum or addition. So we have a +3. So you have a +3, -4. Now let's look at the absolute values of this. The absolute value of 3 is equal to 3, and the absolute value of -4 is equal to 4. So the -4 has a larger absolute value, so we know our sum is going to be negative. So now what's +3 plus -4? Well, they're 1 apart, so 1. So +3 plus -4 would be equal to 1, or Kiara's combined score is equal to -1. Now let's go over one more example here. So a deep sea diver dives 81 feet from the surface. He then dives 14 more feet. What is the diver's location after these 2 dives? All right, so whenever you're working with a word problem like this, we're going to start by highlighting what we know. So he dives 81 feet, dives 14 more feet, and we want to know the diver's location after these 2 dives. So it looks again like it's going to be a sum problem. So let's go ahead and draw ourselves a picture here. So if a diver is diving off, he's going down 81 feet down, then he's going to be at this location. And then he's going to dive 14 more feet to go even further down. And as you can see here, since we're going down, these are both going to be negative numbers because down will always mean negative. So we're going to have a -81 plus a -14. And this will give us a total of -95. Now, this would be a scenario where we have 2 negative numbers, so our sum would be negative. So that is why we ended up with -95 feet, or the diver is 95 feet below the surface after his 2 dives. Let's go ahead and highlight that one here so you can see the answer. All right. So we got some practice problems here. So for starters, I want you to use a number line to show -5 plus -8. And then also, in City A, the temp rises 9 degrees. It then drops 8 degrees. In City B, the temp drops 5 degrees, then drops another 4 degrees. So for starters, how can we write the change in temp for City A? What integer represents the change in temp for City A? What expression represents the change in temp for City B? What integer represents the change in temp for City B? And which city had the greater total change in temp? Alrighty guys, good luck on those problems, and I'll see you tomorrow in class. Oops.